Module 3. Before beginning work. This module teaches you to educate owners and residents that the use of lead-based paint was widespread, to determine if lead-based paint is not present, to use an EPA-recognized test kit to check for lead-based paint, learn methods for collecting paint chip samples for laboratory lead analysis, and how to decide which rules apply. Educate owners and residents. The pre-renovation education rule requires renovation firms to provide the Renovate Right pamphlet to owners and residents prior to any renovation activity in pre-1978 housing and child-occupied facilities. Specific requirements for educating residents, occupants, and delivering the Renovate Right pamphlet vary by type of property and area being renovated. Under the RRP rule, certified firms must give homeowners, residents, and child-occupied facility owners, adult representative, copies of the Renovate Right pamphlet. Let parents, guardians of children using the child-occupied facility know about the renovation and how to get a copy of the Renovate Right pamphlet. Get confirmation of receipt of the Renovate Right pamphlet from owners or evidence that the pamphlet was delivered to tenants and residents. And keep all records for at least 3 years. When working in homes, the pamphlet must be provided no more than 60 days prior to beginning a renovation. Firms must either obtain the owner's written acknowledgement or proof that the pamphlet was sent by certified mail, return receipt, at least 7 days before the renovation begins. For tenants, certified firms must either obtain a written acknowledgement of receipt or document that the firm delivered the pamphlet and was unable to obtain a written acknowledgement. All proof of receipts must be kept for a minimum of 3 years in your records. Sample forms to document confirmation of receipt are included in the Renovate Right pamphlet in the back page. So to review, you may give an individual that you will be conducting a renovation on the same day in person that you begin a renovation. If you give them the Renovate Right pamphlet more than 60 days prior and not begin the renovation within those 60 days, you must give them the Renovate Right pamphlet again and have them sign. If you are sending it by mail, make sure that it's sent via certified mail with return receipt with a minimum of 7 days prior to beginning a renovation. If you're working in a common area for a child-occupied facility, you may post it at the entrances, providing the residents or the individuals that are actually attending the child-occupied facility. In the sign itself, it must describe the nature and location of the work, listing the work start and end dates, and providing the Renovate Right pamphlet or information on how to obtain a free copy of the pamphlet. How widespread is lead-based paint in housing? As you can see in the slide, if the home was built before 1940, there's an 87% chance that the property may have lead-based paint. If it was built between 1940 and 1959, there's a 69% chance. If the home was built between 1960 and 1978, there's a 24% chance. So the older the home, the greater the chance that the home may have lead-based paint. Obviously, the older the home, the more times or opportunities the home had to be painted again and again, and one of those or many more of those layers may contain lead-based paint. How to determine if lead-based paint is present? Paint testing must be performed prior to renovations on all surfaces to be affected by the work, or you must presume the paint is lead-based. Any testing must be performed by an appropriate qualified professional. As you can see in this slide, type of paint testing for renovations. An EPA-recognized test kit, which you will learn in this class, may be conducted by a certified renovator. An X-ray fluorescence instrument, which we call an XRF, is used by a certified lead paint inspector or risk assessor. A certified renovator may not use this XRF or X-ray fluorescence instrument unless they are certified to do so. Paint chip sampling. Both a certified renovator or inspector/risk assessor may use paint chip sampling as a way to identify if there's lead-based paint. So to review, an EPA-recognized test kit may be done by a certified renovator, but a lead inspector risk assessor may not use this as a way to identify if lead-based paint is present. The X-ray instrument may be used by the certified lead paint inspector and risk assessor, but not by a certified renovator. The paint chip sampling may be done by both the certified renovator and the inspector/risk assessor. Using EPA-recognized test kits to check for lead-based paint. Only use EPA-recognized test kits on substrates approved by the kit. Submit a testing report of results from use of an EPA-recognized test kit from the client as soon as possible, but no later than 30 days after completing the renovation. Any and all forms that are collected during a renovation where test kits are completed, the full form of all of the renovations should be provided to the client or the homeowner or the property owner no more than 30 days after completing a renovation. If test kits are used, you must use an EPA-recognized test kit. Do not use any test kits that has not been recognized and approved by EPA. Otherwise, that test will be void. Presently, EPA only requires the use of test kits to determine lead-based paint is not present on the surface. These test kits only tell you yes or no, positive or negative. Is it present or not present? Doesn't tell you how much is present, but it does tell you if there's some presence of lead-based paint. If lead is not determined to be absent using the test kit, the surface must be presumed to be coated. So if you decide not to use an EPA-recognized test kit, you may just consider or presume that there is lead and use the rule and all the processes that are required under the presumption that there may be lead-based paint. A negative test result will mean that lead-safe work practices are not required. Alternative, a certified renovator may collect a paint chip sample, or sampling may be performed by a certified lead inspector or risk assessor to determine whether or not lead-based paint is present. If test kits are used, certified renovators must use an EPA-recognized test kit in order to test affected areas. So as a certified renovator, you will be testing the components which you will be impacting in any property built before 1978. What should be tested? Each building component to be renovated or disturbed by renovation must be tested unless the component is part of a larger component system and is representative of the whole system. In this case, a single component may be represented by the larger system. For instance, a stair thread may represent the whole stair system if the painting history of both is similar. If the painting histories are similar and the tested thread shows a negative test for lead-based paint, then the RRP rule does not apply to the stair system. What substrates can be tested? Substrates means which components can be tested, or which is it, can wood be tested, concrete be tested? Those are all the substrates. That's where the paint was actually painted on. Recognized test kits should only be used to test for lead in paint on substrates for which they are approved. When testing is needed for non-approved substrate or a substrate coating other than paint, a certified risk assessor or lead inspector would be required to do such sampling. Reporting. When EPA-recognized test kits are used, the certified firm must provide a report to the client within 30 days after completion of the renovation. The date of testing, identification of and contact information of the certified firm and certified renovator performing the test kit manufacturer's name, kit identification number, location of surfaces tested, descriptions of the surfaces tested, and the results of testing must be included in the report to the owner, as you will see in the forms that will be provided for practice. Test kit hands-on. The purpose of this hands-on exercise is to teach certified renovators how to correctly use an EPA-recognized test kit to determine if lead-based paint is present on components and surfaces affected by renovation work. Paint chip sample collection method. This practice is used to collect samples for the determination of lead on an area basis, milligrams of lead, or concentration basis, mass percent. Paint chip analysis results of lead greater than or equal to 1.0 milligrams per square centimeters or 0.5% by weight indicates a surface containing lead-based paint. A paint chip analysis result less than 1.0 milligrams per square centimeter or 0.5% by weight will mean that lead-safe work practices are not required. This is an alternative method for certified renovators to check for lead-based paint. Once collected, all paint chip samples must be submitted to an entity recognized by the National Lead Laboratory Accredited Program, NLLAP, for lead analysis. What components should be tested? Each building component to be renovated or disturbed by renovation must be tested unless the components is a part of a larger component system and is representative of the whole system. For example, a stair thread may represent the whole stair system if the painting history of both is similar. If the painting histories are similar and the tested thread shows a negative test for lead-based paint, then the RRP rule does not apply to the stair system. What substrates can be tested? Paint chip samples may be obtained from all painted substrates. Scrape and collect all paint down to the substrate. Because of the porous nature or texture, sample collection is more difficult from substrates such as brick, concrete, and wood. Reporting. When paint chip samples are obtained by a certified renovator, the certified firm must provide a report to the client within 30 days after completion of the renovation. The date of testing identification of and contact information for the firm certified renovator performing the testing, laboratory name, locations of surfaces tested, descriptions of the surfaces tested, and the results of testing must be included in the report to the owner, and again provided no later than 30 days from the completion date. Steps to obtain paint chip samples. Step 1. Write required information and observation about the test location on the paint chip sample collection form and paint chip sample container. Step 2. Mark the collection area using a template or freehand. Step 3. Set up a paint chip collection tray. Step 4. Remove the paint. Step 5. Clean all cutting tools used during paint sample collection. Step 6. Transfer the collected sample to the paint collection container. Step 7. Check documentation for completeness on the paint chip sample collection form. Paint chip sample collection hands-on. The purpose of this hands-on exercise is to teach certified renovators how to correctly collect paint chip samples from components affected by renovation. This will be skill set number 1, will be to use recognized test kits collecting paint chip samples for laboratory-led analysis. The purpose of this hands-on exercise is to teach students how to correctly use EPA-recognized test kits to determine if lead-based paint is present on components and surfaces affected by renovation work. In addition, students will learn an alternative method for determining the presence of lead-based paint by collecting paint chip samples that are submitted to a NLLAP-recognized laboratory for analysis. Using decision logic charts. Using the following pages, you will practice use of the decision logic charts found in the Small Entity Compliance Guide to Renovate Right. The decision logic charts will assist you in making the decisions regarding how the EPA RRP rule applies to your work. Determine if the property is federally assisted, and if it is, then determine what to do next. The information presented in the Small Entity Compliance Guide to Renovate Right flowcharts is intended to assist you in understanding what the RRP rule requirements apply to the renovation you are about to perform and whether the HUD rule also applies to the project. You will find the Small Entity Compliance Guide to Renovate Right flowcharts on the following pages in this module. For a complete copy of the Small Entity Compliance Guide to Renovate Right, see Appendix 4. The flowcharts walk you through a step-by-step through a decision tree which asks you a series of ordered yes or no questions. To use the flowcharts, begin at the top of flowchart 1. Ask yourself each question, following the yes or no answer arrows to the next appropriate question box. At some point, you will come to an arrow with directions about continuing to another flowchart. Follow the direction to whichever flowchart the pathway takes you to, skipping flowcharts that do not apply. Whenever a text box gives directions about what to do, write it down to develop a list of actions that must be taken for RRP rule compliance. Appendix 2 provides a summary of HUD requirements that apply to work done in homes that receive federally assisted information found in Appendix 2, provides assistance in determining whether the property receives federal housing assistance and what requirements apply if it does. If the property is pre-1978 and does receive a federal housing assisted, both the HUD lead safe housing rule and the EPA-RRP rule apply to your renovation work. If you visit Appendix 4, EPA's lead program rule at a glance, you'll start at the very top. Do the requirements apply to the renovation? If you're getting paid to do the work, that is a start. Remember, not getting paid for the work, it is an exemption to the rule. If you start at the very top box, does the job involve activities that disturb painted surfaces in a home or child-occupied facility built before 1978? If the answer is no, EPA lead-based paint renovation, repair, and painting program requirements do not apply. If it is built before 1978, the answer is yes, and you move on to the box below. Are any of the following conditions present? The work is a lead abatement project. If the answer is yes to that question, you move to the right, which again does not apply under the EPA-RRP rule because now it becomes an abatement and an abatement contractor must complete the work. If the answer is no to that question, you move to the box below. As you can see, there are multiple questions within that second box. For example, does work consist of only minor repairs or maintenance that disturb 6 feet or less of any painted surfaces per room for interior activities, or 20 square feet or less of painted surfaces for exterior activities? Remember, that's the de minimis amount within the EPA rule. If this were a project by HUD, the de minimis amount goes down from 6 feet of interior surfaces to only 2 square feet. And then you answer the question. But let's go down to housing is a 0-bedroom dwelling, a studio apartment, dormitory. So the answer is no, it is not. It is an actual regular home. So you will go down to the next box. If it is a housing or 0-bedroom dwelling, that is an exemption. So if the answer is yes, you will go to the box and the EPA-RRP rule does not apply. So that second box, in essence, it's the exception box. The third box is the project and emergency renovation. And remember, if it's an emergency renovation, you have to follow all of the steps with the exception of providing the pamphlets or any of the educational aspects. If it's an emergency renovation and the answer is yes, you move on to the box on the right. And you have another flow chart. If the answer is no, you go on to the box below where it states you will need to provide the lead pamphlet, and then you move on to flow chart number 2 for special requirements. Now you can see in flow chart number 2, which is the next page, how do I comply with the pre-renovation education requirements? You have the 4 boxes on the left-hand side: renovations in owner-occupied dwelling units, renovations in tenant-occupied dwelling units, renovations in common areas, and renovations for child-occupied facilities. Let's say we use the third box down, which is renovations in common areas of multifamily. Then in that case, we have to provide the owner with a lead pamphlet and follow the procedures, which is we can give the pamphlet to the owner on the same day that we start renovation. We can mail it to them more than 7 days prior, but the pamphlet cannot be provided to the owner more than 60 days prior to starting a renovation. If day 61 occurs, we have to provide them with another pamphlet and start the process all over again. Following to number 2, notify the tenants and make the pamphlets available. So by posting a sign in the hallway, common areas, or entry, which actually describe the type of work that will be completed, the start and end date, and that the pamphlet is provided for free by contacting your firm phone number or email address. Maintain the written documents describing the notification procedures, and provide supplemental renovation notice if changes occur in the location and the timing or the scope of work. Now you move on to the box on the right and it says see flowchart 3 for information about specific training and work practice requirements for the job. When you go on to the next page, it says does the renovation training and work practice apply? Is the project an emergency renovation? If the answer is no, we're going to go to flowchart 4 on the right hand side. If the answer is yes, you go to the box below. We're going to say no, and we're going to move on to flowchart number 4. Work practice requirements. Renovation must be performed by a certified firm. That's whomever you work for. The firm must post signs clearly defining the work area, warning occupants, and other persons not involved in renovation activities to remain outside the work area. These signs should be in the language that the occupants understand. Prior to the renovation, the firm must contain the work area so that no dust, debris leaves the work area while the renovation is being performed. D would be work practices listed below are prohibited during the renovation. And remember, the EPA has 3 work practices that are prohibited, and then HUD has an additional 3. But if we move on to the boxes below, is it an interior renovation or is it an exterior renovation? Let's say it's an exterior renovation, so that means we would move on to flowchart number 8. That means that we don't need to see flowchart 5, 6, or 7. If it's an interior renovation, then we jump to flowchart number 5. But we're going to go with exterior, so we're going to go to flowchart number 8. Work practice requirements specific to exterior renovations. The firm must close all doors and windows within 20 feet of the renovation. That means in all directions. To the left and to the right of the renovation, 20 feet, and below you. Ensure the doors within the work area that will be used while the door is being performed are covered with plastic sheathing. And we will learn that in the following modules. Cover the ground with plastic sheathing a minimum of 10 feet from the work area. So from the edges of the work area, you must have 10 feet of plastic beyond that point. So underneath that area plus beyond that. In situations such as where work area is too close to proximity to other buildings, then we can actually do a vertical containment. So we need 10 feet of plastic in all directions from all the edges of the work area, or up to a vertical containment. So if the vertical containment is 5 feet out, we can stop at that point. In situations such as where work areas are in close proximity to the other buildings, aside from the vertical, we should also start to account for windy conditions and etc. After the renovation has been completed, the firm must clean the work area until no dust, debris, or residue remains. The firm must collect all paint chips and debris and seal it in heavy-duty bag. Remember that all paint chips, whether they were there before the renovation, during the renovation, or immediately thereafter, all paint chips must be collected, as you will ultimately be liable or responsible for the area once you're done with your renovations. Remove and dispose of protective sheathing as waste. Waste transported from the renovation activities must be contained to prevent the release of dust and debris. Then you move on to the next level, which is a certified renovator must perform a visual inspection. Unlike the interior, where you need to have an actual wipe test, or you may actually do a cloth test to see to see if it matches with your card, and we're going to discuss that in the future modules. Or if it's a HUD funded, you may need a third-party certified lead inspector and risk assessor to conduct the final clearance. And the exterior is only a visual to make sure that debris is no longer present. If the answer is yes, These conditions must be eliminated and another visual inspection must be completed until there is no debris or residue present. Once the answer is no, the area has been adequately cleaned, remove the warning signs, and you're finished with the renovation. And this is an example of how you would move along this process to help you identify which steps and what you need to do when and where. Now you know. To properly plan a renovation, you must educate owners and residents, determine if lead-based paint is present, determine what requirements from the EPA and HUD rules apply to your renovation activities.